Hello, and welcome to the launch of my debut collection, Wonder Wheel. I'm Chelsea Whitton, and I'm broadcasting live from my sunroom in Cincinnati, Ohio. I want to kind of begin this reading by thanking a lot of the people that made this book possible. I want to first thank LSU Press and Leanne Couch and Wyatt Prunty for selecting this manuscript as part of the Sewanee Poetry Series. It's the product of 10 plus years of work and revision, and I couldn't think of a better home to have my first book. I also want to thank my network of family and friends who have supported me for about 10 years in the writing of this book. I want to thank my husband and my family, my sisters, and my mother, whose birthday it is today. Happy birthday, Mom. I would like to thank my writing instructors and the folks in the various workshops where many of these poems sort of evolved into the versions that exist in Wonder Wheel. Briefly, just wanted to comment on how stunningly beautiful the cover design for the book turned out to be. The image is a microscope slide from 1909 by Arthur E. Smith. It's a photograph of a butterfly's tongue, or proboscis. So thinking about that in terms of a wheel or a spiral, uh, is a good way to consider many of the poems in this book. There's lots of cycles and circles throughout this collection. And okay. Hello and welcome to the launch of my collection of poetry, Wonder Wheel. This is my debut collection, published by LSU Press and selected by Leanne Couch and Wyatt Prunty as part of the Sewanee Poetry Series. I'm so grateful to have my collection published as part of this series, and I can't say enough about how beautiful the book's cover turned out. Um, I'd love to thank my family and support system for helping to make this book possible. In particular, my husband, Matt Yeager, my sisters, Tammy and Lindsay, and my mom, whose birthday it is today. Happy birthday, Mom. So thanks for joining me on April Fool's Day to virtually launch Wonder Wheel. This is a really exciting moment for me, and I'm so glad that you're all here. So the cover design is from a microscope slide from 1909 by Arthur E. Smith. It is a slide of a butterfly's proboscis, or butterfly's tongue, and it was colorized by the talented designers who worked on my book cover. And the spiral as a stand-in for a wheel is a really potent symbol for me, because it signals progress, right? Like something is sort of building or changing as you kind of go around the revolution. And I think that has something in common with the way many of the poems in this collection are arranged. They build on one another. So I guess with that in mind, I will open my reading with my mother's favorite poem in this collection, which is also incidentally the poem that was selected to win the 2019 Sandy Crimmins Prize. It's called Spearside, or Patrilineality. And the thing that makes it sort of connect to that theme of spiraling or building rather than just going back to the same place is that it's a series of sonnets in which that are linked, but they I consider them to sort of descend from each other the way that a son might descend from a father. So keeping that in mind. Okay, Spearside, Patrilineality. Your lopsided father stuck the loose stars to your sky one summer. Even now they glow up there, as if, like you, they are still dumbstruck by the memory of his hulking grace. With one foot on the bed, one on the chest of drawers, his finger pressed each phosphorescent shard into eternity. too high for anyone to tear them down. It should have busted his ass to do a thing like that. It did that kind of thing eventually. That kind of thing eventually will wear a man's skin thin, says mine. His skin is thin and mottled from 5 decades in the sun on a vast green field that only winks at abundance, does not, in fact, yield anything up save little flags from holes, the occasional sky-born alien egg. True enough, he's burned his skin to paper for this game, but he does not, this time, for once, mean golf. He means grief, that kind of thing. He means leaving a child in the ground. All fathers suffer. In the ground, all fathers suffer the fate of the warrior. In life, it's a sky of 10 gods. Each one's a private lodestar, lost to all but us. Whatever they did for a living, our dads, however they hustled and failed, they spun silvery roses from gunfoil, blew vaudeville tunes through grass kazoos, and when they told us how it was, we listened. We believed their tales were true. And so, however rent and upside down and patched, we flew their flags until everything real blew away. Until everything real blew away, your father's father's father raised a subsistence of cabbages above the fruited plain. Nothing much changed when the sky fell on us, it is said, he is said to have said. Only the high folks got knocked down. Ha ha. What could bring a poor man low apart from winter? Every soul piled in one bed with the newspapers stuffed to plug leaks in the windows. Still, to be survived by all 6 children, his salt-blind headstone seems to read, God is fair to the faithful who toil. God is fair to the faithful who toil, basically, complicatedly. Squint and try to see a version of events in which good men are not heroic, only good. Unmask that good, and you may find the face of a previous father, not so good. Meanwhile, and always without knowing why, a procession of fathers stretches far as infinity. Each one is in line to carve his name over his father's name into the stone. It is only a stone, but it shows them where to stand. So that's Spearside patrilineality. I wrote that one at the Rensing Center in Pickens, South Carolina, which I do not necessarily know if it is still functioning as a writing residency or artist residency, but if it is, I highly recommend it. It was a wonderful place to really sink my teeth into a big writing project. So thanks for that. Okay, so I think that I will read a poem from the first section of my collection next. This one is where the title of the poem comes from. So the title of the book comes from. So the poem that I'm about to read is the opening poem in the collection. It's called Mermaid Parade. And the title of the book, Wonder Wheel, is a reference to the Ferris wheel at the Coney Island Mermaid Parade, or at the Coney Island Amusement Park. And I used to attend the Coney Island Mermaid Parade every summer when I lived in New York with my friends. And the imagery is from that, but you don't need to know that to appreciate the poem, I hope. Okay, the Mermaid Parade. Some gulls are circling, my friends. The ocean is a dull jade green. Here comes the tall fin of a cycle. Look how the wonder wheel rewinds. We tip coconut rum into radiant slush drinks, toast King Neptune and the Mermaid Queen. Neptune waggles his trident at my friends. The Merqueen wears radiant red anemones in her jade green hair. The August air unwinds my own pin curls. The cycles, circling Finn, recedes as cyclists in silver suits flank Neptune's roofless coupe. I pause, rewind the memory, and find my friends beside the clock, the jade green ceiling of Grand Central's radiant main concourse is still radiant from wherever I am in this cycle. Before or after, the jade green surf divides for King Neptune, divides me from my friends, collapses time. Whoever winds this clock, I think, must wind the world itself. Even the radiant merqueen turns. Do my friends fathom yet just what this cycle's sharp fin means? King Neptune comes before the jade green flood. We put on jade green lipstick whilst the Q train winds us deeper into Brooklyn. Neptune, meanwhile, rides time's radiant fin in a sesquicentennial cycle. When the parade ends, my friends blow jade green kisses at the radiant, blushing boy who winds the cyclone. Neptune rises. I will miss my friends. So, uh, lots and lots of references to a time in my life that is decidedly over. I spent the better part of my 20s in New York, where I attended my MFA program at the New School, but have been living in Cincinnati, Ohio for the better part of a decade now. And so it's kind of a blast from the past to kind of move through some of the New York poems. It's fun, but it's also almost like looking back on a person that, you know, I'm different from now. It's beautiful, actually. This is one of the first poems in this collection. This chronologically, this is one of the earliest poems that I wrote that appears in this collection. This one, this one was written a long time ago. It's called My Lover's Wife. My lover's wife is unlike me. She goes like a fine green trick of the light, her hair disarranged with begonias and ballpoint pens. I bought her book. It isn't as pretty as she is, at least that is what all men say. Anyway, I haven't read it. I just carry it around to get it dirty. I had a dream I sphinxed my lover's wife. I mean, I riddled her and whipped her with my tail. It was erotic as a coffin turning over. I did not have enough gin for her bath. Her skin burnt carbon in the dream, that tonic smell of forms in triplicate. I woke up coughing like an engine. If I became my lover's wife, I would not be as pretty as my lover's wife. I think if I could kill her, I could never kill her, though I should, for she has taken fire from August, has unmade a thing I loved. If I could kill her, splash the bottle green of her with pitch, I think. The light would go to some place else, would not be left to me. I think I'll just bounce directly into another New York poem. This is the one that follows right behind that one, and it's called Millennial 2014, which feels like an entire universe away from our present moment. It has an epigraph from Albert Camus, which is, at any street corner, the feeling of absurdity can strike any man in the face. Yeah, and also me. Millennial. So here's me pitching myself into an obsolete phone booth on a busy intersection of hats and mustaches, and everybody here is bored to tears and skin and bones, and we are all on time. We are all making time for a little belligerent pigeon kicking behavior, depressed or so frustrated we can't even breathe correctly. Me, I'm like a cat that's been tricked into a horrible sweater. Trees leer and flash their green at me. I barely tell anybody. Tell me about yours. Don't stop. Your special heat? I'm listening, but I'm not really listening. I am listening, but lately something isn't right. What is this drear that keeps us coughing into morning? I'll tell you, I don't feel well. I'll tell you, I'm still not so hungry I'll eat anything. There's a stink bug on my table, everyone. Thank you again, everyone who is attending this launch. I really, really appreciate you. This poem is called Oh Shit Show, and it is very new. And I apologize to my mother and other family members who might be here for the swear word. And there's another one in there somewhere. So apologies for that one too. But that's the nature of this collection of poems. Oh Shit Show. What will they call this fiasco when we are gone, ourselves unable to address this world we know? These day-glow flowers, haunted houses, shoestrung power lines, these chords and colors we love flung together, how we dance and speak and cut our hair, those gemstones we adore, this flare, that ore, the mostly perfect metaphor of water which we treasure and pollute without excessive care, coastlines and lakelands, rivers where we weep and play, these fish, these bugs, these trees, these weeds, this list of breeds we tolerate, this list of so-called pests, the looks we give each other over what we eat for breakfast, listening, as always, to the news, this news, our news, which sings and wails in streaks and rivulets across our airplane views, our news, which must one day be history, which must one day be folklore, our poor, old, woe-begotten internet. The glory holes punched through our haze, the peep show of our slippage over what we used to worship into what we hope one day to fuck, but also what keeps sneaking up on us, bombing our selfies, stealing tithes, buying up the munitions, burrowing into our best descriptions of what hell's boss wants with those, not us, who are bound for its flames. What is in our costumes and blue checks, our roiling currencies, our separated text necks and jaw pains, each trigger finger shoved into gloves we got crocheted bespoke by weeping robots, whilst our pup cups runneth over, whilst we breach like ringlit shipwrecks. I'm using a ring light right now. Whilst we breach like ringlit shipwrecks, heirloom daydreams sunk by cartoon fast reactors with code-generated nicknames whose hot pics of justice mix with pics of fresh plucked shame like so much brackish water hitting pixelated falls that tumble every story of the future we've been told, sold into retelling, froth of every shelling, pus from every plague, loose hair from every blade in which we placed a hopeful plait, unwound, absorbed like every pound of fat we bet would make a difference, lost or gained. Gone anyway now, ravaged or raveled, spun or rearranged, just viscera. This blood and gore we call a discourse, nothing less or more. Maybe our best hope is a history that whatever comes after this won't know how bad it got. Maybe they'll call our war stains spilled fruit pulp. Maybe they'll even whistle something optimistic, mopping it all up. Okay. So I think what we have read so far is a representation of the kind of mood swing you will experience reading this collection of poetry. There are many light, funny, self-deprecating poems, and there are also poems that will end in such a way as to leave everyone involved feeling kind of bad. And my apologies for that, but hopefully good in a different way as well. I'm going to read a slightly more upbeat poem next. This one is called Le Mauvais Objet, which is French for the wrong object or the bad object. Be even, my heaven commanded, but I could never help it. So damned odd was I, so damned irregular and angular and big and also too small, too florid and floor-eyed and fuzzy-headed, fever-faced and flushed and full of crap, and I could dress like something upright and imbibe wine blandly, like the photo negative of someone's bride, but I could never give a traditional blush for decorum's sake, and as such, had no real feel for getting getting inspected, for sitting still while being stroked and searched and told about myself. So heaven made me give them back. All those charming descriptors, my unanimous, handsome unbeauty. So what? I said. The truth is, nothing sunspun sticks around past sundown unless someone sticks it down. Truth is, most truths are cabbages for compost, pound for pound. Yeah, that one's about beauty? Question mark. Okay, so I'm gonna read. I'm gonna use the rest of my time of this reading to focus on the central section of this collection, which includes a poem, an opening poem called Four Harbingers, followed by a sonnet crown entitled The Queen Mother. The sonnets in the crown are rhymed and accentual, so there's a lot of stuff happening formally. You may or may not be able to hear when I read it out loud, but I still think it's a pretty fun ride. So I'll begin with Four Harbingers, and then I'll just move right into the crown. And I probably won't call out the number of the sonnet. I'll probably just keep moving. Thanks again for everyone who attended the launch of this book. I really appreciate you. Four Harbingers. Oh, and I should say that Four Harbingers refers to four Greek goddesses. That's kind of the emphasis that I'm focusing on, is four of the sort of famous Greek goddesses. Four Harbingers. Hecate, of the crossroads and of undecidability, of no moon nights that spoon bend reason, acid laughter leaking from an awful place. Athena, of motherlessness and queer-born girlhood, of gray-eyed clapbacks, of upshots delivered, insight ripping from behind like owl talons. Demeter, of the bitter bargain, of the doubled over grief, of mothers granted hell-shaped mercy, of hand biters and blight bringers, never quite the same. Hestia, of forgotten labor, silent all-mother to legions of servants, of lives boiling over in back rooms, their hymns bleached of words, yet humming still. And this is the Queen Mother. There's an epigraph from Charles Simic that reads, "Death's children resemble you and me." And the quote, the epigraph actually continues. I only included the first two lines for copyright reasons, but the quote is, "Death's children resemble you and me. They go coughing, yes, sir. They sit, oh gosh, I can't remember all of it. It's lost to me. But anyway, the epigraph that still survives with this poem is, Death's children resemble you and me." 1. My babies borrow hunger from their mother. They are legion. They are saltwater pearls. I hate the pretty ones more than the others. This is not their fault, not really. All my girls, they wear my names like cast-off cameos. They walk the earth. Their footsteps make it shake and royal. They do my bidding where they go explosively. I braid the sounds they make into a crown. Gone from me now, my clones, my children, off to blot the wide world out. I sleep my days in and sit nights alone, reading their leaves. I scry their whereabouts. How wide their eyes must be like riverbeds. My fingers twitch whenever they have fed. They feed on sulfur, red dust, smog, hard pressed, a tailpipe's pickled spew. Their teeth are black with the sweet of their mayhem, rotted through. I check up on them. Mother needs contact. They send me postcards from each new address, but rarely take my calls. And when they do, it is all screams and lies. I've raised them right. I feel their love unhinged and gladly cruel, and I return it. Feed them silence. Dare each one to cry. Their laughter is my fuel. They torture one another, bathe in spite, and line their eyes with wanton disrepair. I've made them in my image, after all, I say, pulling my knife out of the wall. I pull my knife out of the wall and gasp at the incision's depth. My strength returns a little more each day. I feed their curse news clippings mostly, watch its blue flames yawn and take their due. It eats what's past. I comb the cinders tenderly. Unburned remains are rendered to my devil's purse to spend as currency. My girls are gone and can't return, but one day they may ask for intercession. What little they earn won't buy them amnesty. I'll reimburse the stars, outfit them with new fates, unpawn their cameos, return them to the streets. It's understood that mother dines on meat. I dine on meat, most of it carry-on. Roadkill, pan-seared, a glass of Sauvignon. Grapes of my wrath pulverized by their feet. Distilled for centuries, it tastes quite sweet. Each dish I primly garnish with the wan white skulls of songbirds, savory as prawns. Birds were my children too not long ago. I honor them, devouring them, they know. I take most meals al fresco with the moon. We talk about our children, toast their ruin and rebirth. I am quite drunk by morning. My good moon leaves me a sober warning. Like you, they cannot stop once they've begun. Take care to hide our daughters from the sun. To hide my daughters from the sun, I cloak them in disguises, nothing so banal as wigs and false mustaches, no such smoke. I build them bodies, give them words to call their earth anatomy, habits and ticks to blur them with the pink neurotic herd. Humiliation and unease I trick them into swallowing. The little birds, their hunger blinds them to my sabotage. They need these weaknesses to fool the light of day. I teach them the deformed dressage of modesty and how to mimic fright. This way, they walk in sunlight undetected, become quite powerful and well respected. I was once powerful and well respected in my sphere. Some say I was a sphere myself when all of this was new. I never held that title in my time. Whatever you've heard, if you have, overestimates my influence, I assure you. Create and destroy, these were jobs I accepted, no small solemnity, many tears. It's amusing, I suppose, to have cried at the beginning. Strangely terrified I was of taking the first swipe. Cold feet, as they say. It was childish, indiscreet. Some looking back is to be expected. No small abandonment has left me here. I leave them, you know who, in open fields, on doorsteps, bassinetted by the wind, to squall until the good people reveal themselves. Take pity, take my babies in. And bad babies they aren't. Babies are disposed to bursts of cruelty as a rule. No, they had developed naturally as far as parents know, already making fools of the habitually good. They grin like angels, giggle, shriek at peekaboo. The cuckoo lays her egg among strange kin and leaves it there. It hatches, ousts its few faux siblings from the nest, and Mother Wren, 9 times in 10, she doesn't know who's who. Who's 9/10 a woman? Who is a perfect specimen, apart from freak unaccountables? Stepping on a crack, who still thinks of her mother? Like a ghost, whose mother overrides her thoughts to speak of tidiness, good posture, judgment day. Who knows the most slimming color is black? Who holds her shame like a pearl in her cheek? Whom can a man make happy? Who can say where her happiness lies? In a glove left behind on the winter playground, a dime too deep to dive for, something about play. Who is all grown up now? Who can tell time? Who straddles the crack for an hour, bereft? Each hour's a crack up I straddle bereaved. Time licks its chops, I pace the littered floor. I've never been much good at waiting for gratification. What my children leave when they are finished isn't very much. I boil their leftovers to make thin soup. I pace the floor, repeat myself, and touch the darkness, play at pining, play on loop their lives like lava flows, each violent birth, the subsequent destruction, falling trees, the screams of men, whole cities on their knees, again, again, and yet, each time, the earth resets. Each time my girls make something new. They inch toward midnight. It is what they do. This is what we do. We inch the big hand back a minute each hour. It's anxious work. We are as canny as can be. You see, if mother ever caught us near her clock, well, penance is one word for it. Mama would not be pleased. So we do it this way. One sister diverts her with a big planned mess. Two others throw tantrums, go berserk in tandem, split her energies. Some 3 or 4 of us keep watch at the door, knock 5 times when the orchestrated drama's at 6s and 7s, 8 when the melee is peak. The bravest, careful of the chime, makes sure that it is never quite bedtime. So that, if you missed it, was the daughters kind of talking back to the mother. Sleep comes for all. Make no mistake. I am no warmed up euphemism. I'm that which devours. Yes, sweet baby, I am that which of the bone claw wrapping nightly. I am why you spit over your shoulder. I am what you spit on. It doesn't matter which harbinger you believe in. I'm that witch, and I will eat you up. But first, I am a mother. I invent the sky, bloom light into it, knit the molecules for air, and tear new life out of the bleeding mud. I am mother to rosehip and frostbite, to pestilence, slow dancing, blues, warfare, and you. I built that need into your blood. This bloody need to build a you and I into the brickwork of cosmology, to give it the stakes of a love affair, to advance and retreat, to send letters into orbit and stare hard at the sky with this yearning that is frank, bodily, and heaven help us real, to be aware of dark matter and heat death and fetter yourselves to the mast anyway like fools. We are all fools aiming radio waves at infinity, begging, please, 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 won't you let me, let me, let me. I've been trying to let you. I've given you tools. You have wasted your time on your knees. On our knees? Mother, please, do you reckon we bothered to kneel? That we're beckoning, expecting you to give us anything? You confuse us with birds, with the many pity-witted animals built to starve in your wondrous lab. We have been carving our names into the back of you, digging away in broad daylight. If you must rig the world to blow, we're going to get it while we can. Don't reprimand us for smiling. We look just like you, our own darling progenitress. We've grown hard as the marl we were born to, and as stiff. We don't bend easily, and we rage at week endings. I am weakening. Rage grips me easy these days, and temperance is a paper bracelet. Soon I'll lose it altogether, likely in the shower while weeping fire water. I am breaking open. I will lift my eyes and see above a choke of trees the feral sky, her tears of fleecy ash. The lukewarm light of day will taper down an unknown valley. Other weather will be blowing in. I contain a pyre inside me built for this. Old as the hills, it has been waiting for the perfect stroke. Who has the thing? Who has the flint to set the thing aroar? My babies strike their matches on the floor. Okay, so thanks for your attention through that one. That was a whopper. And throughout this reading, I really, really appreciate everyone. And I am so grateful again to LSU and to Wyatt and Leanne and to Corey for running this launch, because I would have been completely lost without Corey's help. And I would like to close this reading with one last poem. It's the last poem in the collection, and it's called Legendary. And I would like to dedicate this one to my sister, Lindsay. It's kind of about she and I. legendary. And it's got an epigraph from Sappho, which is the little girls wove crowns of leaves. By an ancient, vine warped yellow house, leaning into the valley's rounded crest, we two grass stained daughters of summer endlessly rolled the hill down to the hunching stream with its narrow, lanky beds where someone sometime hid a honeydew to cool against the wintry trickle. By twilight, train whistles bleating against the beveled laughter of grown ups gathered on the porch. The sounds swelling in the air made us go wild. Our bare feet swept across the dimming field. In great green circles, we ran at top speed, drawing wind from the still night air. Our voices poured from us. We sang old, half learned hymns and chased the sun's bright rind beyond the darkening Blue Ridge. Thanks.
Hey Chelsea, that was really wonderful, and thank you for that. Let me turn this timer up real quick. I want to thank everyone for coming today and spending your afternoon with us. And I also want to encourage you, if you have a question for Chelsea, just put it in the chat here, and I will read it to her. And I also want to let you all know, in case you are unaware, that Chelsea cannot see, she's joining from Zoom, right? So she really can't see, your comments, what's going on. And so anything you really, if you want to let her know that you're here, let me know, and I'll spread the love. So yeah, participate in
It's
the chat. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it's like the dating game. I have no idea what's happening on the other end.
Yeah, you heard it here first. I want to start. Well, honestly, I want to start with talking about how cool it was to hear that crown of sonnets. To imagine, I really enjoyed the rotating cast of voices, and just it was very evocative. So I appreciate you reading that.
Thank you.
I would love to talk about the origin of Wonder Wheel. Can you tell me a little bit like about how it came about?
Yes. So the original title of this collection was The Queen Mother, which was the title of the crown in the middle. But the overpowering theme throughout the book was this idea of circles and cycles and recurrence and sort of returning to similar but not the same circumstances, perhaps with new knowledge or wisdom, and so that sort of comes up in a lot of the poems that feature tons of repetition, like the crown that I had. But also this idea of time kind of functioning that way, right? Like we kind of grow older and we carry all of these memories and experiences with us. Um, and they shape the way we experience, place and groups of people, and that sort of changes over time. And I just always just really interesting to me as a writer, and how to represent that. I think formally has always been really interesting to me.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
I was just saying, so it comes mostly from that.
There are these kind of poetic truths that are difficult to parse, and I think that's what makes them interesting. About, like, as you were saying, about cyclicality, but also about like lineages and inheritance, particularly of women. And I thought, it was interesting to see how these kind of poetic truths were coming out. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe some of the stories or truths you were trying to tell, not just in that crown of sonnets, but just in general.
Yeah, so yeah, just to sort of build off of what you said, I think inheritance is a big theme in the book as well. And what we kind of pass down, and also the way that gender and gendered relationships shape inheritance, and kinds of relationships shape inheritance. Because there's as the first poem that I read is kind of about fathers and fatherhood, and the way that sort of legacy looks from the outside, really, because it's not something that I have obviously insight about. I'm not a son or a father, but I can see a lot. I can pay attention, and there's an element, I think, to that poem that I like about it, that is sort of mystified by the rituals of it. And I think it gives me access to maybe unusual imagery that wouldn't occur to someone on the inside of that. Whereas I feel like the crown, the Queen Mother crown, um, it's I sort of went the other direction and had to render some of it in like this sort of sci-fi or mythological, give it mythological stakes, because I feel like the way that everything gets passed down from mothers to daughters is so much more complex and fraught and full of love, but also like the sort of inherited traumas of patriarchy, if that's not too heavy to say. We I don't know, we yeah, there's a lot of harm that has historically been done in the name of like helping people survive or giving people, you know, the ability to cope with the realities of like of society, right? And so so I think the thing that is sort of happening for me, or what's at stake in The Crown, is that power struggle between like the sort of mother figure and the daughter figure in sort of defining uh, what is it that women are for, what they're here to do, what the world, the stakes of the world that we're building are. um I think that's like an eternal struggle, and it differs, I think, from agonistic struggle as it has always been represented in literature, in that there is that sort of rebellion of the daughters that sort of that functions as like a collective rebellion, as opposed to like one or two individuals kind of overthrowing and taking over or something. I don't know. I feel like that's like one of the things that I can think of that makes it different. Okay, so yes, so thinking in terms of inheritance, I think inheritance can be more cyclical, or thought about more cyclically, when you consider the way that knowledge, but also harm, gets kind of passed around. And I think that one thing that I like drawing, like that happens when you contrast those two poems, is the way that um, the one feels really fluid and the one feels really stuck and structured and only heading in one direction. I rambled all over the place to answer that question.
No, I love that. And I do love how you use kind of a mythological register to kind of get at these truths. You know, I'm thinking of that line, I am the witch, I am that witch, and I will eat you up. But first I am a mother, I invent the sky. And
Mm-hmm.
it's wonderful to see how you're kind of getting at these truths in these other ways, like the language that you choose can really pull different things out.
Yeah, that's a really, I think that's a good, yeah, thanks for pulling that out. That makes me sound so intentional. No, but I think that, yeah, the way that like seasons sort of determine the role almost, there's like a temporality to the way that femininity is constructed, maybe. And it does that in the poem sometimes, with the hag, the sort of crone figure of Mother Chaos, and then the daughters being these sort of rebellious children. I don't know. I also kind of to answer the question of how it came about, it started out as a prose block, and then sort of languished in a drawer for like 3 years, and then I started trying to apply like a rhyme scheme to it, and then I just sort of kept going and built it out, and then before I knew it, it was like too big to fail or something. I like had invested too much time and had to finish it.
That's actually a great segue to my next question because I wanted to talk about, well, I wanted to talk about two things. I wanted to make a comment about compression because I find the compression that you use here, or at least what I'm seeing as compression, really impressive. And I was thinking about this one line. I'm going to try to repeat it, but it's difficult. And I think it's like my new tongue twister. It's the truth is nothing sun spun sticks around past sundown unless someone sticks it down. Which is great. And I was thinking,
When I read it.
um, I mean, you read it really well, and I was impressed. I was wondering about kind of the way you draft in general, kind of besides that crown. Do you find yourself kind of cutting a lot? Do you have a general process for drafting poem?
Yeah, I have a couple of different processes. For poems like that one that are really musical and really lean on like sound, I definitely kind of I don't know. I think the a good analogy would be like a composer tinkling around on the piano, just kind of looking for good sounds. Like I kind of get like attracted to like a sequence of sounds and like build out around that. Not that that was like a central line in the poem or anything, but it's almost like when I get stuck in terms of where to go, I'll kind of look for some music that I can kind of riff on. So that's like part of it. But then the other side of it is that I'll kind of try to just like um, come at something that's sort of antique or very well understood from like an underneath perspective. So like there's another poem in the collection that I didn't read called A Few More Lines for the Torturer's Horse that is a reference to the Autumn poem Musée de Beaux-Arts. And there's a line in that poem about the horse scratching its innocent behind on a tree whilst Icarus is falling into the sea and like all of this catastrophe is happening, like also the mundane, ordinary things are happening simultaneously, right? So my poem in the collection is kind of like looking at the situation from the perspective of the horse, like what is the identity experience of the innocent torturer's horse who's just kind of in a mundane space. And I don't know, I think that's a strategy for me in terms of coming up with what I want to write about, is like how can I like get inside of something that feels very austere and canonical from like a perspective that I haven't heard or seen.
I have a okay, I have a couple other questions for you here. But I do want to talk about kinds of poems
Okay.
because I'd like to talk about, well, I don't know if we I don't know if you read any today, but there are like a fair amount of elegies in this collection. Even if only one is sort of named kind of explicitly. There's an elegy to June Carter Cash in a way, to Patsy Cline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Among others, there's an unnamed ex-cat as well. Can you kind of talk to me about like, I'm just interested in like if there's any, I don't know, you want to tell me about maybe the elegy form or kind of like what
Sure.
draws you to that?
Yeah, sure. So what I teach my students is that elegies aren't like eulogies. They're not about the dead person, right? They're not about, or the lost person or the lost object. They're about the experience psychologically of the person who is coping with the loss, right? And like how that kind of gets rendered or represented in the process of art making or of painting if you're making something that's elegiac that isn't a poem. Um, and so I think I like elegies because they help me get outside of my own usual cycle of thought and I stop pitying myself. I stop thinking about my own mundane sadness. I stop thinking about the little things that bug me, which are ultimately, I don't know. I have a hard time making good poetry out of those sometimes. But when I sort of, I think that sort of state of that lamentation, that relationship to the subject, which is like both lamentation of loss, but also like, what does it feel like to miss this? Um, it makes for like a new assignment every time, right? Because there's like a different, like with every subject, there's like a new experience of loss or a new way of walking yourself through what it feels like to miss something or to lose something. And I think I think for this collection, the range is pretty wide, right? Like as you mentioned, there's like a cat, which is really, sort of a red herring for a relationship that is being lost in some ways. And then, or an objective correlative, depending on how fancy you want to be. But there's also, elegies for country singers, as you mentioned. And then there's a really serious series of elegies for my dad that were genuinely just the loosest formal approach that I could possibly find because I couldn't think in terms of craft when I was trying to like get at those feelings. So yeah, I mean in terms of form, I don't really know that I have a strong opinion about the relationship between form and elegy, but I do think it has to be a certain positionality to the subject that is about distance and not necessarily unemotionality, but the ability to like take note of one's feeling state and like write about it. And I don't know if that always requires distance. It does for me.
I'm actually really happy I asked because I feel like there's like uh, a diversity of not just form but just kind of content in these, and that's not something I would have necessarily considered when I think about this, like maybe as like a genre, you know.
Hmm.
Um, I have a question for you about place, and then I was going to ask you one more question, which is sort of like our standard last question for our authors. Now that we're kind of approaching the 3 o'clock. But first, yeah, I didn't know kind of coming into this that there were some New York poems, so it was cool to hear, right? And I was wondering if is this collection like place bound? Are there any other kind of like cool things about place that you could tell us?
I think this collection is extremely place bound. I think I am very place bound as a writer, which I was born in South Carolina and grew up in North Carolina and grew up with, you know, a lot of natural beauty around me and a dad who was really, really interested in like animals and nature and being outdoors. And so it was something that I always kind of had an eye for and the will to pay attention to. And then moving to New York, um, was sort of this shock to the system for me because I had always been so used to green space. And that sort of was where I drew inspiration as a writer for years and years. And then, moving to New York, everyone writes New York poems when they live in New York. But it took a second for me to sort of find my way of doing it. And I think a poet that really helped me get into that headspace was the poet Amy Clampett. I got really into her work at the end of my MFA program. And she was a poet who was from Iowa originally, but a transplant to New York, who worked at the Audubon Society as a librarian, a research librarian, while writing and working as a poet in New York. And her work she's like a nature poet whose subject is New York City. And so that was always very interesting to me because there is this constant mix in pretty much any city of like the architecture and infrastructure of the city and like the natural world, and the way that those two forces kind of play off of each other has always been really interesting to my eye. So yeah, I sort of kept writing the same sort of placey poems in New York as I had been writing before. And then this sort of weird disconnect happened between the place I had been writing about and the New York that I was writing about. And then I moved again and just kept writing. And then, and in some ways, the spiral kind of began to emerge. That is like the sort of theme of the book, right? So I began in one place and kind of moved to a very different place, and then found my way back around to a similar but different place. And maybe I'm headed to another city sometime in the future that resembles but is different from my past experience. And you sort of notice these moments that rhyme but are different. And I don't know. So there is something kind of kismety about that. But yeah, my book is extremely bound to place, but place is kind of moving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. There's like an interesting relationship there because, yeah, right. Like we always we notice the things that we're not used to, and then in your work, you know, you're kind of like in dialogue with the work that you wrote before. Yeah, it really is a cool cyclicality there. So once again, I'm really happy I asked because you had a really interesting answer there. Um, we are having we had a little bit of connectivity issues for a second, but I think that we're all good.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to end it there. I think that's a good place to end. But before we go, I do want to ask you about, I guess, what you've been working on since you turned this manuscript into us, which I'm sure was, you know, some time ago now. Takes a
Yeah,
while for a book to come out, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. What's been on your mind? Like, what's your artistic process like? And do you have anything kind of in the works that you want to tell us about?
Okay, so what's been on my mind since the book? I have 22-month-old identical twin boys named Hank and Pete. And they are very wonderful and very intense. And I have so much fun being their mom. So I'm doing that and teaching part time and very, very slowly beginning to dip my toes into the water of a second book project, which I think right now is going to be about my mother's side of our family, just the sort of this group of 9 sisters and 3 brothers, of which my grandmother was a part, and this sort of journey that they made from Alabama, where they were like sharecroppers and farmed cotton, to High Point, North Carolina, where one of the brothers owned a hosiery mill and the rest worked in the mill as part of the textile boom that happened in the mid 20th century in my hometown. So that's kind of what I'm thinking the next book's going to be about when I eventually get to that. And it's maybe going to be called Bells. But for right now, I don't know. I'm working on some haikus that I feel really good about and taking care of babies and hopefully sharing this book with as many people as I can.
What genre is the next book going to be in? Is it going to be a poetry? Is it going to be prose?
I think it'll be a hybrid type piece. I think there's going to be a mixture of like reportage and like lyric writing, nonfiction-y writing. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I think, well, for me, like poetry always astounds me, but as like a nonfiction writer, right, reading through your collection, I'm like, okay, I
There's
see, I see whatever the skeleton. I'm
writing.
like,
I'm extremely daunted by every genre that isn't poetry. So, like, obviously no promises, but that's my hope.
well, I want to thank you again for tuning in, everyone, and I want to thank you as well, Chelsea, for being here with us. Your new book is wonderful, and I hope everyone here gets it. There is a link in the chat for a 40% off discount. So if you don't have a copy yet, make sure to get it by clicking that link. And that's it. Yeah. Anything else? Wait, yeah, wait. Show the book up again. I don't think people could see you.
This is the book, and this is my name. Can you
Uh,
see?
yes. Yeah. It's just when I'm talking, it kind of goes away from the book.
Oh, I
So
see. Great. Well, thanks everyone. I can't see you, but I trust that you are here, and it's been a pleasure. And thank you, Corey, and thanks LSU.
no problem. All right. Until next time.
Thank you. Bye.